Welcome into the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, a podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another edition of your New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. Got some fun announcements that we're going to pass along here shortly, as well as it's Thanksgiving week next week. That does not mean Jim Eichenhofer and I have off, nor the Pelicans on Good Friday, that is. I said it again.
Good Friday.
Why is it Good Friday? That does not mean we have off on Black Friday, of course. No, there's the team, because the Pelicans will be playing Memphis. We've got a watch party. We'll give you the details on that here, as well as the Pels. Maybe, Jim, they'll be thankful for some, health in the new year coming up. How about that? Can we be thankful for some new health?
Great. That's number one on my list right now of things that I'm looking for. So
that'd be really nice.
Don't need great food. Just on Thanksgiving, just need some players back on the court.
I happened to watch the game last night. 132-91, the final in Dallas.
I did watch the game.
You did watch the game.
I was confused because I thought it was a given that I would be watching, but I wasn't sure which game you were referring to.
I was making sure you watched.
Yes, I did watch it.
Entire game.
Yep.
This is what it sounded like on the Pelicans Radio Network.
So Ingram, left free throw line, extended jumper, no. And what you've got to do in this building is survive the early onslaught. I've been in here where they've scored 40 in the first quarter and the game effectively was over. You got to guard against that tonight. Thompson pulls up right elbow and down, and it's already 6-0 on cue. Willie Green takes a timeout. But again, it's just the live ball turnovers that give the opposition a chance to run out, get easy buckets, and all of a sudden you're in a hole. Step back left wing three. How do you defend that? You can't. It's indefensible. Jemison was actually right there. 33-21. Irving with 8. Jump feed out to Grimes. Bounce pass to Najee. He'll go left baseline. Euro in. Kick it to Grimes at the buzzer for 3. Absolutely. And that's how you end the first quarter. As the Pelicans allow 44 points in the first. Murphy was 7 to shoot. 1-on-1 with Grimes. Pop a deep straightaway 3. From the rafters. Trey Murphy. Goodness gracious. Nothing but net. 44-32. And now to Boston. Back to Ingram. Hounded by Hardy. Shot clock at 7. Ingram beyond the arc. Pop a 3 anyway. And hit it. Barely rippled the net. I mean, Ingram had nowhere to go and said, I might as well. And that was pure. Get this thing to 15. Make Jason Kidd take a timeout. JRE wide open left wing 3. Wide open, missed it. But there's Javonte Green. A tough rebound in the paint and the stick back. And the Pels are on a 10-2 run. Leave it in the lane, Gafford. And he got blocked by Messi. Yes, he did. Back the other way, Boston. Chested across the floor to Ingram. And a right-hand finger roll. What a sequence. And just like that, you're back down 19. Murphy. Step back right wing 3, short. Rebound Kleba. Pels 3-point percentages diminishing rapidly. Kyrie for the killer. Yep. Left hash mark. That was about 30 feet. Blowing kisses to the crowd. And it's a 22-point game. Willie Green will take a timeout. Ooh, Luka almost had his 5th steal. Out long to Boston. BJ 1-on-1 with Luka. Step back nail jumper. Tough shot. Brandon Boston. He is not shy. He's got 7. Pels down 99-72. 2 minutes left. Mercifully. Roll it. Noel. Left corner. Reeves for 3. Yes. Feeling it. Rook. 9 for Antonio Reeves.
All right, Jim, so as you heard there, lots of Mavericks highlights as well, but there were some things that are positive. And when I say positive, look, I mean, the play of Yves Messi continued to block, and, Reeves getting in some action and getting 9 quick points. Maybe he'll see some action tonight against Cleveland, a back-to-back. But, man, look, 21 turnovers, right? I mean, that's
yeah, it was a killer.
Lot.
I mean, I thought, too, a lot of times when you're undermanned and you're playing against a team that has more talent than you, a lot more players available than you do, the start of the game is huge. If you can get in a lead, even if it's a small lead, you can build up some confidence. If you're in the game at halftime, that kind of stuff, maybe you put a little doubt into the opponent and make them think like, okay, this isn't going to be an easy night. But I thought just the first 2 minutes of the game, to me, set a really bad tone where the Pelicans, like you said, had a bunch of turnovers, and that started the avalanche of them. And then just not getting back on defense and giving up easy baskets. It was just the worst possible opening to the game that you could have.
I'm not trying to make excuses. That's not what I'm trying to do. I think sometimes you have to understand reality, right? Like, I'm 5'7", Jim. I'm never going to dunk a basketball, and, I'm almost 50, right? Mm-hmm. So some of the things that I wish I could have done in life, it's reality, right?
Mm-hmm. Focus on your strengths, though.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Luka Doncic, would you say, and I understand they're still playing, would you, potential Hall of Famer?
Yeah, he's definitely going to be there.
Kyrie Irving, potential Hall of Famer?
Guaranteed, yep.
Klay Thompson, a member of the Splash Brothers, several championships, potential Hall of Famer? Mm-hmm. Right, those three guys last night, Kyrie 4 threes, Luka 3 threes, Klay 5 threes.
That's 12.
Okay,
by my math.
So would you say they're pretty good?
Yeah, they're quite good.
Okay, again, I'm not dissing our team. We don't have 3 potential Hall of Famers at the same time on the court with them. And you understand what I'm getting at? Sure. Bia's doing whatever he can, and he's not supposed to be the point guard. And those 3 early turnovers led to a 6-0 lead, and you think 6-0. That's 2 threes. You should be able to overcome that. But to your point, it's setting the tone. It's just so hard when you're taking on a team that not only has superstars, they got potential Hall of Fame basketball players, and you're playing with 2-way contract players. It's just your margin for error. There is no margin. You almost have to play darn near perfect basketball to win.
And there's a human nature element to all sports as well. I mean, to me, the belief that you have that we can win this game, some of that got drained right off the bat. The Pelicans did a good job of, getting it back to within, I think, a dozen at halftime. And there was a couple runs here and there, but to me, if you're the Mavericks, I don't think you ever really felt seriously threatened. And like I said, the beginning part of the game really established the Mavericks are going to do everything they can to win this game, and it's not going to be that difficult. They came off a run of a bunch of games where they lost close ones, so I think they were motivated no matter who they were playing against, no matter how many guys were out for the other team. They were ready to play, and I think they established that big time, especially in the first quarter. They're already up by 15.
Hey, look, let's look at it this way, right? I asked you about the 3 players that had their threes. You came up with 12 using your math. My math gives me 7 by the Pelicans' 5 starters, 2 by Brandon Ingram, 2 by Trey, 2 by Brandon Boston, 1 by Javonte Green. So it's just tough. It's just tough. That's all I'm saying. On a normal night, I'd live with a 2 for 4 from distance from Brandon Ingram, 17 points. It's just you'd have other help to go in there. One final note, and then we'll get to our guest today, which is Joel Meyers, of course, voice of your New Orleans Pelicans. On the TV side of things, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, the leading player in terms of points off the bench in 25 minutes, 11 points, 7 rebounds. What have you seen from him in this ability to get some minutes here with all the injuries from him?
I think he's doing a really good job of taking advantage of his opportunity to play a lot more. I mean, we didn't really see him get this chance last season. There might have been a couple games where he was on the floor to this extent, but to me it's the combination of, we've mentioned before on Monday that he's been one of the best offensive rebounders in the league over this recent stretch of games. So he's rebounding really well, and I think he's making a lot of hustle plays, but his three-point shot to me just continues to look so much better than it did maybe last season or throughout the early part of his career. He's brought his percentages up a ton, and I feel like I feel confident now when he shoots a three that it's going to go in, especially when he has his feet set. So he's just both ends of the floor. I think he's done a nice job in trying to help out and trying to keep them competitive in some of these games.
All right, final thing before we get to Joel, here's head coach Willie Green.
Yeah, we came out just lackluster, and I think the first few possessions we had turnovers and they capitalized on them, and we just could never really get back into it and get a rhythm.
Pretty much puts a wrap on that. Well, I mean, it's not much you can really look at that. You got to move on to Cleveland. We'll talk about Cleveland. Plus, it is Wednesday, Winter Conference Wednesday. Stock up, stock down, all that's coming up. But next, Mr. Joel Meyers. All right, now time to bring in Mr. Joel Meyers, voice of your New Orleans Pelicans on the television side of things. And Jim, I got to imagine he's a little sleepy tonight. You looked it up. How long a flight is it from Dallas to Cleveland?
It's just over 1,000-mile flight.
There you go. Joe, was that a long flight last night, buddy?
I don't remember the flight. I don't remember the game, and I can't recall the flight either. I'm trying to block it out of my memory now, guys.
I understand. We will move on, sir. What do you got for Mr. Meyers?
Well, what time were we talking about that you got in? Do you remember that, Joel?
Yeah, about 3:30.
Okay. Yeah. It's,
3:30 Eastern to the hotel.
Yeah. We were just talking. We're not going to get too in deep on this, but it is an odd back-to-back to go from Central Time to Eastern Time and then fly that far. But I feel like it might be just on the fringes of like what's allowed in the rules by the NBA. So it's definitely tough. But
Well, let me just jump in, Jim.
Sure.
Jim, because
Sure.
they broke all the rules when they made the schedule for the Pels this year. Let's face it. They have the most back-to-backs. They have the most two-game sets. It's an unusual, very different, in all my years, very different schedule, to say the least. And we should have known when we started with 2 games in Portland and 2 games in San Francisco. And then the 2 games in San Francisco are consecutive.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we go to Phoenix, it's only once this year because the 2 games in Phoenix are also on consecutive nights. And I do not understand the logic when you don't go to a movie 2 nights in a row, the same movie, do you? Or
Right.
Broadway play 2 nights in a row. So I know that they want to do what they can to keep the players healthy and minimize travel. But at the same time, the travel's never been better. Planes have never been nicer.
Right.
And next year, they're going to have new planes. So it's interesting. Let's see if anything changes by next season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. One of the big goals is to minimize travel, but obviously this isn't a case where that was happening. One of the things I noted too was that the league put in a rule for the NBA Cup that you can't play an NBA Cup in the second game of a back-to-back, but it doesn't apply to the first game of a back-to-back. So obviously the Pelicans played NBA Cup last night, and then tonight they're playing a back-to-back. So just a little interesting wrinkle that doesn't really help the Pelicans in terms of the back-to-back that they have, for this one. But, too, I can understand.
No, as you both know, we do live for the Cup. There's no question about that.
There it is.
I can understand the part about Portland playing 2 games. I would rather go there and play 2 games than take a 5-hour flight twice to Portland. But then again,
okay, but let me just jump in on that. What does it do for the season ticket holder and those that go into the building? Now, I know the revenue streams are incredible through media and rights deals, but for the loyalist who buys season tickets or buys packages and looks forward to these games, and especially for those that are the 2 consecutive games, because a lot of times you're not going to play certain guys in back-to-backs.
Right.
So I don't know what it actually, how it's advantageous for the people that go out of their way to be in the building, to pay for the ticket, to pay for the concessions and the apparel they buy for their kids, those that actually take the time to go into the game.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest stumbling block over the year. I'm sure this idea was brought to the NBA or from teams, or the league thought about it over time, but I think that was the biggest reason that they didn't do it. But eventually, and maybe COVID was part of this, that they decided, it's worth the trade-off of, you're doing something that isn't ideal for, like you said, season ticket holders and fans, but in exchange for that, you're theoretically reducing the travel, and you're also reducing how many times, and again, this doesn't apply to today, but you're reducing how many times you're getting into the next city at 3 or 4 a.m. because, when you play the same team 2 games in a row, you can just go back to the hotel in between the first and second game instead of flying to another city and getting there at 1 or 2 a.m. But either way, it is an interesting discussion. I know, people have different opinions on it, and we'll see how it goes. But I definitely don't think it's something that's going away. So it's just going to be part of the schedule. But Joel, we were talking, Gus and I were talking the other day about, some of our tastes in terms of broadcasters and play-by-play guys. We thought you would be a great person to kind of advance this discussion with. I was wondering, who are some of the guys, whether it's, the local team guys or the national guys, some of the play-by-play broadcasters that you respect the most and you enjoy listening to? Because Gus and I both have our own, preferences of guys that we like to listen to.
Well, I'd like your input, but he's local and he's national. And I think he's the very best at what we do. And that's Mike Breen,
Yeah.
who is with the Knicks and with ABC. There's a couple of others, whether it's radio or TV. I think most of us that grew up in radio and have migrated to television, maybe for economic reasons, do it the right way, did the reps and got the reps in early. A Kevin Calabro, who's with the Sonics forever, and now does the Portland Trailblazers. And off the top of my head, a couple of guys on the radio side that I think are exceptional. Mark Boyle with the Indiana Pacers. And go to the Boston Celtics, go to Sean Grandy. I do listen to a lot of the games on radio, too, on Sirius XM when we're on the road, like Todd does. And when I say Todd Graffinini. So I do appreciate the guys that are painting the picture on the radio side. But Mark Boyle, Sean Grandy, those are a couple that come to mind as well on the radio side.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are the people that you mentioned, too, are guys that have been doing it for a long time, too. It seems like Mark Boyle's been with the Pacers as long as I can remember following the NBA. And I know Kevin Calabro, like you mentioned, was with the Sonics. And I think back before League Pass, I always heard his highlights, and I was like, man, that guy's voice is incredible. And, I think Portland's local TV broadcast is great, too, with including, I don't know if you've noticed this, too, they have Tom Haberstroh as kind of like a correspondent, and he kind of does some different stat stuff and some different information stuff. I think that's a really great wrinkle to the broadcast. Just adds, some more insight and some more analysis to what they do. But, speaking of what you guys do, too,
right, very similar to what we do with Andrew Lopez, bringing in a former writer.
You actually led me into the next thing I was going to ask you about, which was just, can you talk about the new setup? Obviously, this year you guys had kind of a way that you guys ran things with the previous network for a bunch of years, and now with Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, as well as Andrew. I mean, can you kind of talk about what it's been like so far through the first 15 games of the season and what you've enjoyed about it?
Well, I've enjoyed the fact that Andrew's joined us and brings different perspective, different angles to everything as a former writer with ESPN.com. And I think it's the access to everyone in the three-state region is the biggest bonus for us. Then we didn't have our games on direct. They were on the cable. So for friends and family that bought the league pass around the country, if you bought it on cable, you got your options with us or the opposition. And then found out over the last couple of days, now it's on direct TV as well. So that's good because people are going to be coming in from different parts of the country because everybody comes into New Orleans. And now they not only have access to the games, but the option to see it on direct TV. But I just like the fact that the three-state region, and now so many more people have the opportunity to watch the games. And hopefully when everybody gets back on the floor and healthy, it's the kind of brand of basketball that we're all hoping for at the start of the season.
You mentioned the writer aspect of Andrew. I don't know, maybe I'm a little biased, but I feel like if you can always promote the writers, if you can always have them in prominent roles, I think that's always a good thing. But I mean, what's it been like as far as his first month or so in the role?
Well, it's the angles, the different ways to look at it, the creativity that goes along with it, because you see the game differently, and sometimes you see it from that. What am I going to write about later? What's my storyline? So I like what Andrew actually brings. It's totally different sometimes than all of us as broadcasters because we're calling the game and we're looking at storylines from within, but not big picture sometime for post game. Because as you know, Jim, you might have a deadline, but if you don't have a deadline, then you have plenty of time to write and come up with different ideas. So I like what Andrew's obviously brought to the table for all of us.
Tonight's game, we talked about the getting in pretty late in Cleveland for this game, but I mean, what are your thoughts on the Cavs as far as them starting 15-1? I mean, was this a team that you thought going into the season that had a chance to be this elite, or are you pretty surprised by the fact that they were undefeated until last night against Boston?
Not surprised at all. Not surprised in the least. They have two bigs They have one of the top 3 or 4 backcourts in the NBA. Andy and I talked about it last night. I think Luka and Kyrie are the number 1 backcourt in the NBA. And Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland aren't too far behind. You can't live in today's NBA. It's like the quarterbacks in the NFL. If you don't have a good quarterback, you can't survive. And in the NBA, and that's why we were so excited about DeJounte Murray joining the Pels, if you don't have a lead guard to orchestrate things, it's not going to work. And they have 2 lead guards, both teams. So they have Luka, Kyrie, and to the addition of Klay Thompson just to sit there, it's like he's fishing on his boat. I'll just wait. Whenever you need me, I'm over here on the wing. Just flip it my way, and I'll hit a 3 for you. So, and then the additions, I like what they've done. They've got a couple of really good shooters. Merrill's back in the lineup now for Cleveland. Evan Mobley has emerged. Jared Allen, we already know what he can do. They extended him with 4 for 100 over the summer, so he's not going anywhere. But Cleveland's done a good job of orchestrating their roster. You have to have a lead guard, and they have 2 guys that can get them into their sets with Mitchell and Darius Garland.
Joel, go get a nap in, sir, and then we will see you later tonight on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network as the Pelicans take on the Cavaliers, 6:30 local time, 6 o'clock for the pregame. Thank you for your time, man.
Hey, guys, thank you, and get healthy, Pels. Thanks again.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you, bud. Our thanks to Mr. Joel Meyers for joining us. Maybe very sleepy-eyed over there in Cleveland. We'll see what takes place tonight. We'll get into the Cavs here. Jim Eichenhofer, they lost yesterday. That game felt like an Eastern Conference Finals game. Man, I know we're early, but Boston's good. They're defending champs. And Cleveland just lost. And what's crazy, it's a cup game. You know, if things go a certain way, they may not even win their pod.
Right.
You know, the
one of
Cavaliers.
them's not going to win their group. So
how tough is that pod?
Yeah, that's pretty difficult. Yeah, I mean, going into the season, I don't think people thought the Cavs were going to be this good. So yeah, it's a little rough to have the team that won their first 15 games and the defending NBA champions in the same group, but that's how it is. It's kind of a random draw sometimes.
You just said it. You didn't know if they would be that good. We got a chance to see them up close and personal here just last week. What do you think of the Cavs?
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of this, of course, is hindsight, but I think people maybe overanalyze what happened last season with them, and they started drawing conclusions about, maybe Garland and Mitchell isn't the best combination. Maybe Allen and Mobley isn't. Maybe those guys can't play together. But if you go back to 2 years ago, I mean, they were one of the best teams in the league in net rating, and they had a bunch of stats that showed that those 4 guys in whatever combination that you put them on the floor can be really good. So it seems like they're going back to that. I mean, to me, one of the biggest things that stands out about them, too, just in general, is, Mitchell's pretty established into his career. It's not like he's a 10, 12-year veteran, but he's been in the league for a while. But the other 3 guys among their top 4, I think all can keep getting better. And we've seen that with Darius Garland, that he's made a jump this season. When you have players that are that talented and are still so early in their career, sometimes it's people, you kind of overlook the possibility of internal improvement, guys that you already have on your roster getting better, and I think that's a lot of what's happened, a lot of maybe what explains part of the improvement that they've made to where they're, off to a historic start in NBA history.
Yeah, I think one of the things that'll be interesting just to see is how they kind of go about it here as well. Look, obviously when you're undefeated, you're trying to stack as many wins as possible. Maybe you put, I guess what I'm trying to lead into here is, could they sit anybody tonight, you think?
I mean, I guess it's possible, but one thing they definitely had a shorter trip from Boston to Cleveland. I mean, as someone from the Northeast, that's not a long flight. So I mean, I'm sure they got in a lot earlier than the Pelicans did. So not sure how much of a factor that's going to be in terms of, if they had won and they were still undefeated, would that change the way that they treat tonight's game? Maybe it's not a factor at all, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
About the Pelicans, already on a short, end of the bench here. Lots of different players. We saw at the end of the game yesterday, Antonio Reeves knocked down a couple of shots. Karlo Matkovic was recalled from the squadron. He did get into the game late. I got to imagine those 2 guys, because of a back-to-back, see some minutes today. Trey Murphy didn't play in the back-to-back last week. Let's see if he plays this
He's
week
already been ruled out.
He's already been ruled out.
Yeah,
So
he's ruled out. So we just got the injury report as we speak, and now Trey Murphy is out tonight. Brandon Ingram is also out tonight. Brandon Ingram is listed with a bilateral ankle sprain, and Trey Murphy is injury management, so really the same designation that they used on the weekend for Trey to not play in the second game of a back-to-back against the Lakers. So, you're talking 8 guys that are out on the injured list right now for the Pelicans.
That's unbelievable. What's the roster? 15.
15 plus the 3 two-way guys, so you're talking 18 total.
And how many
so you
are out?
subtract 8, so that would get you down to 10.
Yeah.
And, another thing, too, real quick, they've started 13 different players this season. 13 players on the Pelicans have started at least one game, and 8 of those 13 are out as well. So, you're talking there's only 5 other players available tonight that have started a game. So, I think on the website before the season started, there was a guess the schedule contest that we've had where you have to guess. So tonight you might do a guess the starting lineup contest, and I don't know what the prize would be, but maybe pride. But it's not gonna be easy. I'm just looking at some of the numbers here. It's not gonna be easy to even predict who's gonna start tonight.
Do you know the team's only played 15 games?
Yeah, that's pretty unbelievable.
How many different starters?
13 different guys have started at least once. Right.
And out of those 15 games, only 5 have started multiple games, or what would you say? Or?
No, 5. I said of the 13 guys have started a game, 8 of those guys are out tonight, so that leaves the other 5. There's 5 players available among that 13 tonight that have started
out of 15 games.
Season. Correct. Yeah, and the Pelicans have used, 10 different starting lineup combinations, and I'm sure we're going to see number 11 tonight, Gus.
10 different start. You're right, because there's a report out there that we just got. I would say a new Pels player. He's been on and off with us here as well, and Alfred Payton, a local here. More importantly, he's a point guard, Jim. 21 turnovers yesterday. Turnovers hurt them in a couple of games last week. I'm assuming because of certain players already being out, he may be in the starting lineup. And if that's the case, Jim, that is your 11th starting lineup.
Yeah, it's possible. And by the way, in a corresponding move, Jalen Noel was waived, so he won't be part of the mix now. But yeah, I can't wait to see however many minutes Alfred plays. I don't think I have a good feel for how much it's going to be, but whatever it is, just having a traditional point guard who has a ton of experience in the NBA, I can't wait to see that and to see how that affects the offense and just their ability to not only reduce mistakes. You mentioned the turnovers, 21 against Dallas, but just able to get into their offense more easily, able to get into plays and sets more quickly so that they're not up against the shot clock. I just think that however long he's on the floor, he'll be able to help them in a bunch of different ways. So really happy to see that and see him get his opportunity.
Yeah, well, we'll see what takes place, obviously. As that game tips off, remember, 6:30 Central Time, 6 o'clock for Pelicans Warmth on the radio side, and Pelicans, what is it, tip-off? Pelicans
Live? Is that what
Pelicans Live.
For the TV pregame?
Yeah. I was just going to say, tune in to Aaron and Wes.
Yeah, that works too.
Tune in to Aaron and Wes. There's an official start time.
All right, y'all. Now it's time for Western Conference Wednesday. Mr. Eichenhofer will tell us whose stock is up and whose stock is down. So let's get started. Jim, what is our team to keep an eye on for this week?
Thank you, Mallory. I think the team to watch over the next 7 days is kind of a little bit off the board. I don't think this is a team that I've talked about very much on Western Conference Wednesday at all through the first month of the season, but I'm going with the Portland Trailblazers because they won 3 games in a row. They're now up to 6-8. So a team that really started the season with people thinking they're way out of any reasonable contention for postseason is a little bit closer. They haven't moved up a ton in the standings in terms of what place they're in. They're still in 13th, but I think a lot of people around the league have just been really interested in what they've been doing lately. They swept the Timberwolves, which was a shocker in 2 games they played in Portland, but another reason I'm picking the Trailblazers for the team to watch is they have a 5-game road trip coming up, and it's very challenging. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can maintain the way they've played lately. They're at Oklahoma City tonight. Then they have 2 games in Houston on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and then they're at Memphis on Monday. So if they can keep winning the way that they have lately, I think not all of a sudden you're going to have another team in the mix that you didn't expect that was going to be competing for a top 10 spot. So curious to see. And in terms of stock up and stock down, for stock up, Gus, I have your Houston Rockets. They went 3-1 over the last 7 days. They've moved up to 10-5 record overall, and they're fourth in the Western Conference. So I think just the fact that they're in fourth to me is really impressive. I know it's early in the season, and the margin, they might be one game ahead of a bunch of other teams, but either way, they went 2-0 against the Clippers. They beat the Bulls, and they lost by 1 point to the Bucks. So they were very close to extending their winning streak, I think, to 6 games, and kind of lost at the buzzer to the Bucks. So impressed with the Rockets. They're doing a really nice job. Stock down, and I mean, keeping with the theme that we've talked about a lot in recent weeks with, when you have your main guys out, it's tough to win. Stock down is the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
They went 0-4 over the last 7 days. They lost games to Sacramento, OKC, Minnesota, and Orlando. And after they started out incredibly well, they were 9-2 a week ago. They're now 9-6 and in 6th place in the West. And if either Durant doesn't come back soon or they don't start picking up some wins, I'm sure they're going to keep dropping, and they're going to be in a position where things have changed drastically from elite tier of the West to now in that big group of teams that are right around 500 or just a little bit over 500.
So you're saying it matters to have your
just a
player.
touch. It's important to have.
Amazing
your
how
guys.
it goes.
Yeah.
Western Conference final participant, the Phoenix Suns, 2 weeks ago.
Right. A week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At some point, everyone's going to be healthy here for the Pels, right?
Yeah, and across the league, hopefully a bunch of these players will come back. We've seen teams. I mean, this isn't Eastern Conference Wednesday, but I mean the Sixers are 2-11 with some of the injuries that they've had, and even some of the guys that they've had come back. So hopefully, we keep saying this, but hopefully in the upcoming shows that we have next week, we'll start having more details about guys coming back from injury for the Pelicans.
Okay, all right. See what happens here tonight as the Pels take on the Cavs. Don't forget, our next podcast will come on Fridays. We not only talk about this game, but preview the game against Golden State. The Warriors will be in town, and that is a 6:30 game, by the way. That is an early tip, not 7.
Move to
6:30.
ESPN, yep.
There it is,
It
national
was a 7.
TV.
Yep.
So we'll talk then. Jim, as always, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Gus.
Give Jim a follow on X, Jim_Eichenhofer. Thanks for tuning us in on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.